guy. He told me to push the button and start early, and then he walked away.
Are we live? I don't remember how to do this. How do you do this? Is this the time when we paint things?
Bakamaru, is that really what we should prioritize?
What?
Said, can we agree, chat, that they should take a pass at the intro sometime and update with some of their newer projects?
Are you just trying to make work for us?
Let's do that.
We're going to put everything on hold and do that.
Everything's on hold.
No more new paints.
Because we need a new stream intro.
I know we said April 25th on the new colors. We're going to have to put that on hold. Baka has requested. What is going on, everybody? Hello, it's me again. Hi. Nerds! Bunch of nerds. Baka's like, all right, listen here. What's going on, everybody? The phrasing was sometime, not today. No Baby J today? Baby J is taking some much needed time off. He was off Friday and Monday.
And guess what? He's going to be off 2 more days at some point.
Sugar he's like, nerds where? I gotta hide. These are your people. Don't worry about it. These are the kind of nerds you can, well, I was going to say you could trust them, but they're not really trustworthy. It's more like in your distrust, you can feel comfortable around these types of nerds.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
In the lack of safety, you can feel safe in the lack of safety.
I think so.
With these nerds.
Yeah. Yeah, Baby J's home staring at the sun.
Last week he seemed a bit too stressed. He deserved a few days break from you. From me.
I'm sorry.
Dude, the best days of his life were driving in the car with me.
We all had like a week break from Jason because he was sick all last week.
I was here 2 days.
Part of 1 day.
I was here 2 days. I was out here 2. I was here Tuesday and Thursday. Yep. I left at 2:30 on Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Or on Thursday. I went on the stream. I had to leave at 2:30 on Thursday. Gamad Elay, hi. Can you get 1 more day break of me? Paint Liquor? Are you saying you need 1 more day off from me?
Hairdo, kind of both.
I don't feel like that's very nice. Am I a demanding sick person? No, I'm a recluse. I just want to be left alone.
I said a little bit of both.
I don't think that's fair. Jen and I are both very horrible sick people. We kind of just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
Baby J took time off for blind taste testing of Pro Acryl. Wait a minute. Don't eat the paint. Paint Liquor healthy should be in quotes. I'm still fighting off the end of my sinus nonsense. This is what you get when you go to California. And it rains the entire time. Jess, what's going on? You honestly weren't going to get the new sets because you're not an NMM fan or a Bright Colors, but after watching Vinci V's. Yeah, so, you know.
The metallic thing is not.
I think people get their brains all twisted because.
Non-metallic metal set.
Yeah, Flame On uses those colors to do some spectacular non-metallic gold. They are just a family of browns. Browns and yellows that are spectacular for everything from flesh to leather to you name it. They were just a great addition into the line of browns and yellows that kind of wrap that whole line of colors up, right? Especially when you take into account the orange oxide that comes in the Adepticon set along with the brown drab, right? Just a tremendous way to fill out the family of yellows and browns. But yeah, don't get fooled when you see the way colors are used by particular artists. That does not mean that's all they're for, right? They're just paint. They're just colors.
And we can assure you that nowhere on the label is it marked as being a non-metallic metal set or anything.
Yeah, and the bright colors, as you've seen, I mean, on this guy, we've been using Louise's set to tremendous effect, right? The bright green, the dark hot pink as all the underpainting on the kind of mottled flesh that I've been doing. So, Great stuff. The orange red on the cape. So, good stuffs. When am I going to make a finger painting set? We already did. All of them can be used with finger painting.
Yeah, already. Pre-built.
Bob Gnarly's painting. What's going on? Great name. Are you going to go to the? Are you going to go the Reaper AK route, and are we going to have 300 colors at some point? No. You can kind of see from the way that we do our colors, we're not trying to do like triads. We don't offer a tint and a shade in multiple levels for all the colors. Some we do if they're colors that we use a lot. The way the color line is really built is colors that I tend to use and mix a lot. Okay? So if there are colors that I feel like you use when building up, like, say, a good red workup, having a very deep, dark, rich red or brown, and then a mid-tone red and a bright red is a great way to do that. And so it's easy to do those if you're using that color a lot. But across our range, you don't find us doing that a whole lot. Certain colors that are just a pain to mix will do, especially if we can do it with, like, a single pigment. But no, Jen and I don't. Like, we go bonkers thinking about how many colors we have right now. With like 128 colors or 126 or 28 colors or whatever it is. Our goal, you have to think from a manufacturing standpoint, because we manufacture our own paint, right? And so the more colors you have, the longer it takes to be able to restock colors. Or you have to grow everything, you know? So every time you add a color, you got to add 2 people. And that doesn't make sense. So, yeah, I don't think so.
Immortal, omnipresent, Ceratosaurus.
That's a lot.
Linguist.
That's a lot. That's a lot right there.
Thank you for giving us a try, even though you haven't officially tried them yet.
Glad you got to pick some up. That's awesome.
To the store, we appreciate that and hope you like the paints. And yeah, the white is one of the things that we're known for.
That and very bad jokes.
Yeah,
we do bad jokes very well. Just kind of an oxymoron. Thank you, Bob Gnarly. That's awesome. Nick Pye, hello. We were just talking about you last night. Nick Pye. Yeah. Jen and I went out to a very, very quaint little dinner, and your name came up. So I just want you to know.
Not sure what that says about us.
You're part of our lives, whether you like it or not. In that way. Like on an intimate Sunday dinner. Hey, you know what we should do? We should inform Nick Pye we found a new pie place. That's exactly what was said, by the way.
It's called Pie Snob. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Do we do bad jokes well or the best jokes badly? We are definitely a bad jokes well. We make horrible jokes better.
Oh, yeah,
Some of us know how to ruin good jokes too, but we won't name and shame. Only worth half the taste, though. Too much donkey butt. That's on purpose. That is definitely on purpose.
I don't know if they deliver.
So if you can't tell, I'm delaying the whole painting thing because I don't know if I remember how to. It's been a long time since I painted.
New signature sets April 25th in on monumenthobbies.com and in some stores. The stores will
There's
depend on the stores.
already a problem.
Oh gosh.
Where are my eyes?
Wherever you left them.
That would be the question. Aha!
Do like dum-dums and make mystery flavors. Oh, that went fast. Results of previous one mixing in the new one and calling it a day. So we have a paint called Wizard's Butt, which is kind of that. Cannot be purchased on our website.
Good God, those are the dirtiest glasses ever.
What cam do you guys use on the mini? I'm opening my painting channel soon.
This is a Blackmagic 4K. Cinema 4K. For all the miniature cams. For the painting. And they have the problem is not the camera, it's the lens. They have very expensive lenses on them. Depending on what your setup is, that's where you'll spend all your time, is trying to figure out how to maintain a good focus and color and content and all that good stuffs.
Just said I'm getting a chalky-like texture when using my bold titanium white. I had to say the whole titanium. Any idea what I'm doing wrong?
Too thin?
Yeah.
With ultramatte paints, if you're ever getting a chalky finish, you're going too thin. You're trying to thin them as if they are other people's paints. Remember that Pro Acryl is its own thing. We didn't copy other people's formula, we made our own. As hobbyists, painting for over 45 years myself, I made a paint that was built for miniature painting and less fooling around on the palette, so don't thin it as much. You know, you can take it straight out of the bottle and use it on a damp brush. You've seen my thinning videos, and you've seen me do it on stream, and I don't add or thin down a lot at all. If you're glazing with white and getting a chalky finish, you're probably better off building up and not glazing big surfaces with white. Use something like white blue or something like that. They all have the same titanium base, but you're thinning too much. Get more with fewer brush passes is the key. And I know that's a little scary, because as we go through it, you know, I think that the process of learning to paint in layers like that, especially when glazing, is that if you do more, it allows you to kind of, you know, adjust as you go, and it gives you a little bit more confidence building. If you do like that, use something like the glaze wash medium to thin rather than just pure water. And you should be good too. But it's over diluting usually causes that problem.
Teach, you might be right. We have fantastic cameras, and if you are very serious about streaming, then they might be a good place to start. But if you are just testing out streaming and not sure how committed you are, then yeah, ours might be overkill.
Oh yeah, I mean, have any of you tried the Micromark brush camera? What is that? The one that, so like, that straps on and lets you see the brush eye view? That seems silly and very, like...
Oh, like you put a camera, like, right here on your...
Like found footage, everybody gets sick. I saw somebody do something like that.
It's like a camera, like a GoPro, kind of?
Yeah. It was like one that you do exploratory surgery with. I don't know if that's what they're talking about.
Wizard's Butt is giveaway only.
We will sell variations of Wizard's Butt, but you shouldn't expect any new Wizard's Butt colors until well after the new release of paints.
We got some paint sets coming out pretty soon here that we're focused on right now.
Yeah.
OSOB Paint said, any suggestions for how to do melting snow on bases?
Melted snow? Like as an effect, or to paint it, or how are we talking? Because melted snow, I think, is done very well with like something along the lines of our snow texture paste, and then using a little bit of some form of epoxy resin for the area where it starts liquefying around the edges, if you're trying to get that kind of true effect done. Because you want it to be, you know, kind of muddy, clumpy in the middle, and then thinner and wet out towards the edges where it thins out. I feel like.
Teeny tiny victories. I mean, that's a hard question for us to answer.
What's that?
Maybe chat will have some input. We're going to salute on Saturday. What paints are must try, would you say? I have Bold Titanium and Ninja and Vince sets, so small collection so far. Get the rest of them.
All
of them
is always the right answer.
But it depends on, you know, like what you like to work on. You see Jason use certain colors on pretty much everything, right? Like
dark purple I'm using right now.
If you've got the Ninja and Vince, you've already got Payne's Gray, so you're set there. But he does use like dark sea Ben a lot, right? What else?
I apologize for my sniffles all day today, by the way. I haven't had the sniffles until I stand up to paint in front of people. That's great. Sitting at my desk, no sniffles.
Well, thank you. Oh, that was Scientologist. Thank you, Scientologist, for the Twitch Prime sub.
Holy cow, how many months? 80 million? I feel like Scientologist
65.
Probably on 80 million.
65.
That's a bunch of years.
It's a lot of months.
Good to see you, Scientologist. Hope things are well.
Route said wet diaper, but clean. Thank you for clarifying. With super glue has made good wet snow for me in the past. Strello said going back to the thinning question, so if I know you say using a brush full that has been wiped off beforehand is enough to thin the paint, but would that make wet palettes not needed? I just picked one up, but I haven't used one before as I just used the old Citadel plastic palette for years and years. Jason doesn't use one.
You know, I use a dry palette, but it doesn't mean you can't use a wet palette. Jordan uses a wet palette to tremendous effect.
Jordan uses a wet palette. Jason uses a dry palette.
Mashik from Flame On uses a wet palette. Most people use wet palettes. Us dry palette people are a dying breed, I feel like. But no, I mean you can definitely use a wet palette. If you've seen me show you how to prepare your wet palette, you just want to make sure that the top of your paper is very dry, and don't flood the palette paper itself. Don't let the palette be thinning your paint. So you don't want it to act as a dilution mechanism. You want it to act as a remoisturizing method so that it keeps the center of the droplet of paint as close to right out of the bottle as it can for as long as it can. Which means don't spread your paint out all over it like you see a bunch of artists do, because the more you flatten your paint out, the quicker it evaporates anyway. And that causes them to have to keep the wet palette wetter. And so there's a bunch of dilution happening there. So that our paints are not going to like a whole lot. If you want vibrancy. Now, the more you want to glaze and stuff like that, it just really is a consideration to do. I mean, you've seen me paint entire models with the wet palette. We did, this whole guy was all done with the wet palette. You know?
Ustrello, just purely out of curiosity, because you said you've been using the plastic palette for up to this point and have never used a wet palette. What made you want to use a wet palette?
What made me? Or
no, Ustrello.
Oh, I only use them when people want to tell me I can't use one.
I know you don't use a wet palette, but Ustrello said, I just picked one up, but I haven't used one before, as I just used the old Citadel plastic palette for years and years.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
They're great for keeping mixes. If you work with a lot of mixing of paint, so you take 2 colors or 3 colors, mix them together to get the desired color you want. Hello! Solways!
Studios, thank you for the raid.
What's going on, gang? I'm back. You know, then a wet palette works really, really good for keeping your mixes to the point where you don't have to, you know, continually go back and remix all the time like I do.
Gosu said, Soul Ray Raid, now I have 2 monument streams up. Does that mean that you were bouncing back and forth? Nobody likes to feel like they're not the only one. Gosu.
2-timer. 2-timer. What's going on, Soulways gang? How's the stream?
Who's this handsome fella? This is Jason. Also known as Slow Fuse.
My name is Frank. My name is Buck Knife.
Soulway said, hey, Monument and Company was a short stream for me today. Feel a bit sick. That's no good.
I'm just getting over a sinus infection, so I'll be sniffling in everybody's ears. But I feel pretty good, actually. Sorry to hear that.
Estrella said, personally, I just broke out of the Citadel only mode after taking a break for graduate school. I started watching more videos and tutorials about painting, how I learned about us, and saw that wet palettes were a big thing now, and they seemed interesting.
It's a placebo, for the most part. But if it gets you painting and you like the results, use it.
Doesn't hurt to try something new.
I'm going to go blow my nose real quick. Excuse them.
Hey, Chuck. Otherwise known as Not Bob. I didn't get that. What did I miss?
Not Bob.
I don't know. Bob Gnarly said their glaze is the best in the industry, and Noosh is a game changer. Awesome. You can use it for way more than weathering.
I've been loving seeing all of the creative stuff that people are messaging us with and showing on the internet for how they've been using Noosh. As a part of Noosh is obviously the ability as a drying retarder or extender, right? And so being able to have acrylics open, we call that open time, the time it takes the paint to cure or to start curing, to where if you move it, it starts tearing. The longer it can be in that usable state is called your open time. And being able to have an acrylic with as long an open time as Noosh gives it without also collapsing the way the pigment responds, because if you just use an extender or a retarder, and you were to put as much retarder in paint as you do Noosh, the retarder would make the paint not work any longer. It would lose its adhesion in most cases, so you're not going to get it to stick to surfaces, you're not going to get it to dry and cure the way you want it to. The pigment isn't going to flow the way you want to. It basically breaks the paint, just like over diluting with water or any other medium would. So the trick with Noosh is to keep the pigment dispersion the way that you want it, so that it still acts like paint, but stays open that long. And so when you get that, and you start using it, you're like, ooh, what if? So we've seen people wet blend with it, although I still think that the glazed wash medium is better for your wet blending. But with Noosh, I've seen people use it without mixing pigment into it, do a layer of Noosh on the model, and then put your paint into the Noosh on the model for wet blending. It works okay. But just watching people experiment has been great. We've gotten a lot of messages and replies to our Noosh ads where we saw, like, one guy did a T-55 Russian tank and weathered it, and I couldn't tell it wasn't oil wash. Like, it really was, and I can't believe it's not an oil wash moment for me. I've been, coming from the world of scale modeling in my teens and earlier years, and going through all of that at a time where you had to really train yourself to do these techniques because there weren't products made for it back then. Looking at some of the ways people are using this in the military scale modeling world and seeing their results, and I'm like, yep, it works. It does exactly what they want it to do in every way, and people are blown away. So
Great.
I love it.
Said, I have a very important question for you fine folks. I have an over-the-top idea. Any tips you might have for turning a greater unclean one into a giant Garfield?
I love it.
Like the cat.
If you've seen the great clean one that was done, the guy shaved all the details off of the unclean one, all the pustules, and then sculpted it to where he was smooth Buddha belly. That's disturbing. Like, that's uncanny valley to the 10th degree, but you can do the same thing with cat. I feel like that's the way.
I would like to see this when it's done.
Yeah,
Please.
I think it would be fantastic. The only thing is it's going to be a little weird with the arm length, right? Cats' arms and legs don't bend like humanoids, but that would be great. You were thinking of flocking a great unclean one orange? Yeah, you could use just like a static grass applicator and make sure all the static grass laid down, and then prime it so that you can get it all moving like hair. That could be a way to do it. Comb it, right?
That's awesome.
And then do orange and... Did he have black stripes? Was he striped? Yeah. Oh, that'd be so good. I say this needs to happen.
I need to see it. Avian had a question for Slow Fuse. How would Jason do glazing without a wet palette? Am I doing a setup for a monument product? Maybe.
How would I do glazing without a wet palette?
Oh,
I mean, that's what I do every day,
medium?
right?
Huh?
I'll show you right now because I'm going to glaze some on his ears.
Remember, Jason doesn't use a wet palette, so
Right.
he has an answer for this.
Does anybody remember what I glazed on his skin first?
I think we were, well, first of all, we were looking for this model
I think it was
week
bright
because
shadow
Shelby
flesh.
wanted to look at it for something. Maybe the cloak.
I think it was bright shadow flesh.
But no, I don't remember.
That's what we're going to do. I put purple down already. I can't remember.
Don't you think kitty cat ears just fit on a great unclean one?
Oh, don't use a static grass applicator if you're doing Garfield, because it'll be like it'll be like afro, right? It'll all stand up.
The stuff spilling out of him.
You want it to lay down. I think you want it to lay down, right? Yeah, so if I'm glazing, so these are the colors that I have on the ear. These ears are tiny little spots. This isn't going to be the best experience here, but if we take this, I just take my brush, right? So if we talk about, again, how I think, good God, this paintbrush needs to be cleaned, how I thin for all of my painting, right, is I just come over here, put my brush in my cup, and then that's how much water this brush will hold. This is a number 3, I think, or a 4, I don't remember. That's a lot of water. So I don't want that much because that'll turn it into like a super diluted mess. So I'll hit it on my paper towel once and get rid of a bunch of that wetness, but you still see there's a lot of shiny wetness in the brush. That's good. Then I come over here to the paint and just kind of drag out a small tail of color and keep pulling color into it. Here, let me show you.
I'm gonna say, can we put your palette?
I don't think we have the palette.
I think we do.
Do we have this still? No. What's over here? Oh, because I just moved it.
Yeah. Really quick, while you're doing this, Bob Gnarly said, can you use the soap in place of the Masters as a cleaner and conditioner? And I say, please do. Yes, absolutely.
So here's my little spot of paint, and I'll just grab the side and pull it out with all that water in it, not the drop itself. I don't dilute the paint. I have diluted water in my brush, and I just pull a little bit of paint out into my water, basically, is what's happening here. Right? And then I'll come over here, and part of the thumb palette is that you can test your opacity real quick with the color. See? So glazing. So I'm doing 2 things here. I'm seeing the opacity of the color, and I'm getting rid of all of the excess wetness on my brush because you don't want that much material when you go to glaze. And then you come over here, and now you've gotten rid of all that wetness. I know the opacity is good, and then I just come over here and start moving my paintbrush as normal. Right? Super simple. No fuss, no mess. The biggest thing with filtering and glazing is making sure you don't have too much moisture on the brush when you touch the model, because all of that moisture will go running off into weird nooks and crannies, and it can upset your shading, it can upset the color balance on the model very, very quickly. So again, it's all about getting rid of, wicking off most of the moisture before painting. You still get a lot of color this way, right? Maybe not for huge, broad strokes, right? But I've got enough to be applying color and layering it up in that glazed manner, like so. And I still see my greens and my purples and stuff through that first layer. And then I can just kind of figure out how much more do I need to go, you know, and if I need another layer, I'll add another layer, which in this case I will. Again, same thing, moisture on my brush, get a little bit of diluted paint. Now this is showing me what it did on the first pass on the model over those colors, and then if I go right over that again, what is that second layer of opacity going to do? It's going to hide more of my reds, my greens, and my purples. So again, wicking off material, checking to see what it's going to do. Go over here and paint. Want more of the skin tone towards the upper areas, so just like normal painting, kind of move the color where you want it.
Immortal Omnipresent, I'm just going to say IOCL, said that you should auction off your Jackson Pollock palette when you switch to a new one. He's actually, we've given it away before.
It's a piece of glass, so...
It's a glass, and he soaks it, and then it will peel off, and we have chunks of it.
Yeah, I wore... Well, no, that was from the airbrush clean-out thing. I wore it as a crown one time.
Twitch telling me I sent 1,244 chats in March. I'm living my best life. You are. Those are rookie numbers.
And there we go. So again, the most important part of glazing happens wherever you wick the color off. And if you can, I'm not telling you to paint on your hand. Some people hate having paint on their hand. Some people don't like the fact that paint's on your skin. Skin is your largest organ, be careful. But I use my thumb palette. But if you're using a piece of paper or whatever you're using, you know, being able to have the colors you've painted already down and then thin your paint and then test it over those colors gives you a really quick visual test that says, okay, that's going to be enough to work with. And then you just keep doing that. But it's getting that right. So if I come over here, put a lot of water on my brush, come over here and get some of this flesh tone, right? And you see how much paint is in this brush now, right? That's a lot of paint for anything. And then I come over here, and I was just to go and let's grab a test model. Where do I have a test model? This guy. I were to grab this guy and for some reason wanted to be glazing flesh tone on this leather, and I go and I hit the model with this much paint, now I have a lot of paint I have to figure out how to move around. It's going to get down into every nook and cranny, and it's going to give me more pigment. Acts more like a wash almost. It doesn't flow like a wash, but it sits in the nooks and crannies like a wash. So you can see how all of these spots, low spots, are brighter than the high spots, right? And so now I've got to like, okay, now I got to get the brush clean, come back over here and like wick it out of the model. I got to get all that color out of the recesses, right? Because that's not what a glaze is for. That's a wash. And I don't want that brightness down in there. So I got to come back and like trace all that. That's a pain in the butt, right? And that can offset all of your shading that you've been doing. So having too much material will give you that problem. And I see that a lot in people's finished works, you know, especially on skin, where I see like down in the recesses between muscles, bright color. And I know that that's from glazing with too much material and the glaze ran down into the recesses. If you take all that off, right, then when I come back over here and I start painting with it, right, I'm not going to get that buildup. I'm going to get much less color on the surface, but I'm not going to get the buildup in the low spots. I'm going to be able to just start accenting the color the way I want. And then I just come back and do it as many times as needed until I've got that color built up where I want. And if you're doing it right, 1 to 2, maybe 3 passes, depending on how you're glazing, should be plenty to get you the effect you're looking for.
Gabriel said the Space Marine looks like he's heading to kindergarten and his parents gave up trying to dress him.
Yep. This is definitely the, hey, I'm Batman kindergartner outfit.
Kids. I love seeing them in a store wearing cowboy boots and like.
This is one of our clown Marines that we give to people at shows so they can test the paints. And the paints that are always tested are bright ones that they want to see how they cover on black. So it's always crazy stuff that happens. But there you go. Come to a convention. You too can paint one of our clown Marines. So that's the key, right? The bulk of glazing happens on your wicking side, getting rid of most of the material, which seems like a wasteful process, but it's the end goal that you're really looking for. Don't worry about the fact that you're, you know, a lot of people be like, well, how do I put less paint on the brush then? It doesn't matter. You're still going to have to get rid of it because you never want a droplet to have to move around on the model. You want to have it be like paint strokes, but the less dilute a paint is, the thicker it is, the less of it comes off of the bristles every stroke. And so when you dilute it, the more paint is released off the bristles of the brush every time, and it's harder to control. So you've got to get rid of a bunch of that and then just go back to the palette more times. Pretty easy. Painterabo, that's a good one. Until he's just a sphere of paint, we would just prime and lose more detail. It's fine. So 99% of glazing is the same wet palette or not? Wait.
It's the same.
Is the same wet palette or not? Oh, yeah. I don't care if you have a wet palette or not. However you decide to dilute your paint is up to you. Wet palette, you know, putting it on a tile or dry palette, piece of glass, whatever. It's getting rid of the material before you go to the model. It's that in-between step that's the most important. I mean, there's also the fact that you need to make sure more than ever when you're glazing that you're moving your brush from where you don't want the paint to where you want the paint. Does that make sense? I try to teach this all the time, no matter what you're doing, unless you're just base coating something entirely in a color. Once you start moving to layered colors, you always need to have your brush stroke go from where you want less of the color to where you want more of the color, not opposite. And a lot of people do opposite, and it will counterbalance all of the contrast you're trying to build up. Because the paintbrush will leave the most pigment at the end of the brush stroke, right? We always talk about it like a broom when you're sweeping the floor. If you sweep a pile of dirt, it leaves a little comet tail of dirt behind it, a little bit of dust, but moves most of the pile to the end of the brush stroke. That's exactly how moving paint works. And so if you're not careful, right, if I were to want to make this highlight on the shoulder here, but I started at the highlight and pushed paint outward, I'm not going to get it done right. I have to move from out here, which seems illogical because you're saying, well, I don't really want paint there, but you have to start out here and move the paint to where you want it and stop. Out here, stop. Keep moving paint towards the bright spot. That'll give you the blend out here where the paint pushes with the brush and just leaves a little bit behind, and then you stop there and it leaves it all here. That's true with everything, but especially noticeable when glazing because you have such a little amount of pigment left and that you'll see little dots. Right? And so if your brush is moving in different directions, that's also how you build up texture and get unwanted things on your model. Keep your brush stroke consistent going in the direction where you want to see the paint end up, right? And if you can train yourself to do that, you'll be a much better painter overnight. That is, I don't know, I dread to say 80% of the problem with most people's painting is that one simple thing. Because it's not quite 80% because it depends on how you're painting, of course. But for most people, they don't understand that brushstroke direction, that is the principal idea of brush control, is moving paint from where you don't want it to where you do. A lot of people start where they don't want it because it makes sense that I start with white here and then I just flip it and I get less as I come out to the end. That's very difficult to do, right? Because that's not how the physics of brushes work. So you want to do it the reverse. And once you can get that built into your head, all of your painting, glazing, layering, everything you do, wet blending, everything will become much easier. All right, I know I went and glazed back over it with caramel brown. I was really, oh, that's not caramel brown. That's caramel brown. Because I love this color. So useful. I've been stroking. I remember this. This was like a joke or like a meme song like before me. Right?
Like a novelty.
I've been stroking.
They used to play it at a bar I would go to in college.
You don't think you're fun at parties? That means you're probably either the most fun or not invited. The same thing, we'll glaze the caramel brown here, right? Same thing, get rid of a lot of the color.
They do still happen. They're a little different than they used to be. But parties do still happen.
I'm using the caramel brown, believe it or not, because of the dilution that happens when glazing to give me that jaundiced yellow color in the skin. Notice how you have that real gross, not quite well see a doctor yellowish without using yellow though. Because when you dilute a brown and put it over something bright, depending on the brown, of course. You'll get more of a yellow.
If it's bigger than our 7-person D&D group or family get-together for Christmas, I just don't want to go. I would make an exception for a con near Dallas that Monument is attending. COVID ruined my social tolerances. I think we all forgot how to interact. Things like that require me to actually leave my house and do the peopling thing, doesn't it? I don't like peopling. It's overrated. It certainly can be. Some days.
There are some days where
Definitely
peopling is
some
rough.
days where peopling is very challenging. Rotting flesh. Hep C is the way to be. Gross. We learned that we didn't need to go to big group events. We glimpsed the promised land.
Now, is this actual hair? I think it is, but is it his? I can't tell. I guess it is.
We're in the point of back in the real world that I'm like starting to miss being around people. People that I like.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of people I don't want to be around.
Does anybody know what this thing is? This like the Infinity Stones? Like, is this like the Mind Stone in his head? What am I looking at here? Anybody know anything about Ushiran? Like, what is this damn thing? Is it a gem? Is it like a thing that keeps him alive? What is this? Third eye? What's going on here, dude? I need answers. I don't know what I'm looking at.
It's an L on his forehead.
What is this?
It's his hair, if he has it.
Well, Game Delay, I look at it and it's almost like he took somebody else's scalp hair and like draped it over his horns to make it seem like he had hair, which is the kind of thing that crazy Ghoul King would do, I feel like.
Very Silence of the Lambs.
I have to ask these questions because this is Games Workshop. Who knows? I need to talk to the artist. When do you varnish a model? Display tabletop? I rarely varnish anything unless I have a lot of satiny finish on it in places I didn't want to because of how I painted. Like if I paint with a ton of glaze layers or something, sometimes the paint will satin out. Some of our colors are more satin than others, so if I want to use matte varnish, I will. But I don't typically varnish. I don't go into a model thinking I have to varnish anything. For gameplay, when I do whole armies, I used to go through and like matte seal them, but that was back when you could still get Tester's Dull Coat, the lacquer spray, and get it very easily. Now it's harder and harder to come by.
Source does said it looks like a red gem on the box art.
Is it? Okay.
Paint Liquor confirms.
So more like a gemstone kind of a thing. I'll mess around with that idea. It won't be red, but figure something out.
IOCL said, walk to the gas station for a slice of pizza and a tall boy raspberry twisted tea to enjoy the eclipse. Didn't have to people with anyone beyond the cashier.
Don't stare at the sun!
Don't look at it. My favorite meme today is, you know what, while we're at it, don't look directly at me either.
Yeah. While you're busy wearing those glasses. I need you to wear those glasses when you look at me every day, too. Everybody needs special Jason glasses. Nuts in white satin, never reaching the end. Growing out of his forehead or hammered very firmly into his forehead. Yeah, the skin has got a lip around the outside, so that's why I said it's kind of like Mind Stone Vision or something.
So here's an unpopular.
Hello, Wad.
Unpopular opinion. I didn't care about the eclipse at all.
I didn't either.
Zero interest.
When I was a kid, that was cool. You punch a hole in the paper and do the thing, and you could see it. It was like, oh my gosh, science! That was cool once, and then you're like, got it.
I've never understood the hype.
Turns out the eclipse does absolutely nothing. So, who cares? But if you're a kid, if you have kids, you should do it with a kid. Poke the hole, do the paper.
Yeah.
Because seeing the light and seeing it as the sun moves across is crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You don't think about it like that.
Dollar bills, y'all.
Turns out as an adult, I mean, if your life's that boring.
Thank you for the bits.
Avian, thank you for the biddies. Is cloudy in Austin, so barely. I heard a lot of people were very overcast and bummed.
A lot of cloudiness.
I just looked out when people were like, I can see it. I looked out here and it was like pure sunlight. I was hoping for like Lord of the Rings, like Sauron, like the lights all dim and turn red and we hear howling in the distance.
I got a news alert from our local TV news station that said, watch it live on our stream from Phoenix. I'm like, that's good enough.
TV!
Like, let me just put on your live stream real quick here.
TV saves me again.
Like, yeah, it looks
there
exactly
you go, Paint
like
Liquor.
I remembered. Nothing different.
I was reading like the New York Times or somebody, on my news feed showed up and said, Americans brace for the totality of the eclipse. And I'm like, what a stupid way to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just, whatever. It's not like a
The world's
once-in-a-lifetime
ending.
thing.
Overcast and bummed is the description on your dating profile. Is you getting any hits? You getting any luck there? Any hits? I feel like that's not the way to attract the people you want to go on dates with. I'm just going to say it out loud. Right? I feel like if that's where you're starting from, that's where you decide to start from. I'm thinking kind of crazy. Some yellow-green, maybe?
Posted your eclipse shots in the general chat. 2445 solar eclipse will be the next one visible across most of the contiguous United States. Yeah, but so I'm 51 years old and I've seen an eclipse before.
When is it?
2045.
2045?
Yeah.
Will we be here?
I mean, maybe? Who knows? Favorite meme is the gold chain optometrist talking about how busy he'll be tomorrow. James really said one of the great disappointments of my life is that my view of nature doesn't always involve a telephoto lens. The moon in real life is so small and seldom has wolves in front of it.
That worked well. A little bit of yellow green, and then
Yeah,
hit it with a
it'll
glaze
happen
of the
in-
burgundy over the top of it again.
In 2045, and I probably won't care about it then either. Monument Eclipse Stream 2045.
Oh, you bet, baby.
Noden said I bought the base set, have some primer on the way. What would be your recommendation for my next step? Open the bottle, squeeze out some paint, pick up a brush, dip it in the paint, put paintbrush on bottle.
Jen is on top of her game, because I was going to say the same thing. The next step, rock that.
No, plaid paint is 50 something, 2053.
Well, after
No,
I'm gone.
No, that's not right either. 2073. It's 50 years.
Well, after I'm gone. Plaid and paisley,
Dust Fizzler, I'll be
houndstooth.
a mean old man throwing paint in 2045. Yeah, 2073 for fun.
Ooh, you know what else these new browns are good for? I feel like they're probably all really good. There's like the orange brown for like really good bottom coat color for teeth, like nasty smoker's teeth.
No, gross.
The orange brown, it is.
Well, so again, we will let chat answer your question because we will say to buy them all. But expansion set 1 is a nice next step because it has a lot of colors that
been
are
my
going to
paint.
complement what you have in the base set. Yeah, expansion 1 would be next. Expansion 2 is transparents. They might be, you know, depending on what your goals are for painting. They might be something that you look at later down the road. Metallics, if you use metallics, our metallics, that's great. It's another good one to pick up.
Yeah, expansion set 1 is usually where we push people because it has all of the really good, not all, but a really good starting point for tints, tones, and shades. It has the neutral grays in it.
Yep.
Yellow ochre.
Dark blue, dark purple.
Dark blue, dark purple.
Has some nice
burnt
flesh.
orange.
You got black, brown, olive flesh, pale pink, shadow flesh.
It's
all in
just
there.
a fantastic.
Expansion one is a great next step. But keep in mind too that you can also build your own set. So you can mix and match across the entire range and create a set that's going to work for you and still get a discount. So if that works, everything is very slow. Did that give you a link? Yes, there it is. Okay. Yeah, T-Schmidt. That's why I said maybe expansion 2 is one that's for later. Just because they are different. They're not.
Once you learn them, you'll use them on everything.
Yeah.
But they are more of an advanced.
Once
technique.
you know what you want to use them for, you'll use them all the time. Like you'll find ways to use them because they're great. Jordan loves them. He uses them all the time. Sugar Rush said, when are we getting a fluorescent blue? Had to buy someone else's, and I don't like it.
Probably not.
You don't really need it. Our sky blue is great.
Transparent blue over white
Transparent blue over
is
white.
brighter. We didn't look at the fluorescents for their ability to fluoresce, and I know that sounds weird, but what I mean by that is I didn't care personally whether or not they would glow under the black light. They do, but that wasn't the prime objective of having them. And people are like, well, why make fluorescents then? Well, because they are brighter in normal light in most cases. Very, very vibrant pigments, very translucent, but our transparent paints already take care of that with a lot of the colors, blue being one because blue doesn't fluoresce very well. The blue fluorescent pigment doesn't have the same intensity in normal lighting as the other ones do. So probably not going to see it because, like I said, just take transparent blue, put it over white, and you've got a brighter blue, or sky blue.
Yeah,
is
Source said I
fantastic
saw
that way.
someone compare sky blue to fluorescent blues from other brands, and the sky blue was brighter.
We tested it.
Yeah, we had one.
I mean, I have
Fairly lackluster.
it didn't make the cut, so
Didn't
it's
make
probably
the
not
cut.
even up here on my bench anymore, but we have a blue someplace around here. I don't know when. So for $1 million, we can send you a bottle of Acryl fluorescent blue. I can make probably 2 bottles.
Yeah, maybe. 1.5.
I could probably make 2 bottles. Bach is like, no, real play. I said $1 million. If I can only make 2 bottles, it's got to be a lot.
Supply and demand.
It's got to be a lot.
$500 is very reasonable for a bold sense of humor.
Well, sense of humor is $500. When you guys see that model, you're gonna crack up. It's so hilarious. For those of you that were at Adepticon and saw it, do you agree? That model's hilarious.
You guys took it to Adepticon?
No, the guy showed up at Adepticon with it.
Oh.
It's in the crates. So it might come back today. I don't know. Crates are supposed to come back today, but Carter was saying maybe tomorrow.
Game Delay said I tried to steal a bold sense of humor, but I just can't take a joke.
But
I had $1 million.
he looks like a guy that smoked Pall Malls too many years.
You gonna tell everyone about your new game?
Oh my god. I'm late to the party with it, but I'm playing Lives of P. And I have to admit, I stayed away from it because a lot of people said if you liked Sekiro, you'll love it. And I hated Sekiro because I don't like games that force you into parry mechanics. I like to be able to play how I want to play. And if you feel like you got to parry, great. If you just want to dodge, great. Whatever. In those Souls-like ventures.
He does look like he would smell like Pall Mall saltines and black coffee.
Yeah, right? That's what I'm going for here. This is like that's like the hug and kiss from grandma.
Yeah.
He is the grandma kiss. Oh, he pinches you on the cheek first, and then the smell,
right,
and then the lips, the dry, papery lips. Blah. Sugar Rush, great game. It is, okay, right now I'm willing to call it the best non-Souls game. Souls-like, I guess, right?
Did you get over your frustration, you're yelling at it? Because you were yelling at it. Did you get past that?
Did I yell yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. That was it. You know what? It's funny.
Or maybe it was the day before. Maybe it was
I yelled in the way that was not good the day before because I tried 2 Souls-like games this weekend that I had on my hard drive for a long time and it never started up. The first one was Lords of the Fallen. It's garbage. Don't play it. It was a shame because it looks beautiful, but it's a bad game. The combat in it ruins it. There's so much good about it. It's so great, and then you have to use, and then the combat sucks. So it's like, no, can't do it. Especially some of the tuning on the boss fights. They're great boss fights, and it's just like, nope, can't do it. But the yelling that I did yesterday, the frustration I felt yesterday was really good as I was learning boss fights. In these games, you just get it. You're like, oh, come on. You know, it's like, no way! Because I get him down to like 10 health and then you die.
Okay.
You know, and you're like, grr! But you feel like you're making progress. So your frustration it builds and builds and builds and builds and then you win. And then you're like, yeah! That's why you play these games. That's the whole thing. The learning process of Souls games is what I love about them. And have since Demon Souls way back. But yeah. So Liza P is really good so far. Now, granted, I just finished the factory. So if you've played the game, I'm not very far, right? But I'm really loving it. You'd love a Souls game that doesn't punish you as harshly for sucking? Yeah, that's the problem with them, is it, you know, a game, I think Elden Ring is probably the best, although maybe Bloodborne. Bloodborne is the easiest one, but you can only play it on PlayStation, I think. Bloodborne I didn't like as much because it was too easy. Elden Ring I liked a lot because it was not linear. So if you felt like you were running up against a brick wall, you can go someplace else and farm and fight and get better. And it didn't feel like it punished you as badly for doing so, because in all the other Souls games, if you ran up against a brick wall, like a fight you just were under-geared or under-leveled for, in order to get leveled correctly for it, you felt like you had to go fight the same stuff over and over. It felt like grinding, you know? So you had to get good scrub in most of the Souls games. Elden Ring feels a little bit different because there's so much you can do to quote-unquote grind. Like, you can go into high-level areas and cheese for XP and build up your XP and nobody cares. You could be like, you know, level 200 before you even get to the second boss. and then things become trivial if you can, you know, move the sticks on the controller. So I feel like Elden Ring has the potential to be the easiest Souls game, but it's also one of the hardest Souls games later on because it does have some of the hardest fights ever. The Millennia fight is arguably one of the hardest fights in all of video games.
DJ Samuel, thank you for the follow.
I don't know if they've nerfed it or anything because I beat Elden Ring very early on. So they may have nerfed some of those fights, but Sekiro was the first game where the parry mechanic clicked for you. Played it pretty hard, though once I was done, you were done. Yeah, I really like Sekiro for a lot of the environment and the stuff. Again, it's a great looking game. I'll go back and play it occasionally and remember why I didn't play it. Because it punishes you for not parrying. It forces you to play a specific way, or you're not going to enjoy the game. There's just no other way to play it. And that I didn't like. So, because I could only get so far, and then I forget what boss it was, but if you couldn't parry, you couldn't, there's no way to win. So.
Baka said you want to talk about a fun game to eat your life away, Fuse. April brings the new game mode to Dwarf Fortress. Now that's an amazing game. I
don't know. I've seen it, but I don't know anything about it. So Elden Ring is the Skyrim of the Souls-likes? Very much so, yeah. If that's the way to... That rings very true, yeah. You can go wander around and do whatever you want. The map is huge. There's a couple of gates because you can't get to part of the map without beating a particular boss, and that's story-driven. So there is a linear aspect to it, but the size of the map you can play without ever fighting a boss is tremendous. Like, it's huge compared to a lot of worlds. So you play it more for the story and the atmosphere of the world. The atmosphere of the world in Souls games is bar none some of the best I've ever played. The story, very meh, because it's very hard to understand if there even is one in a lot of cases. You got to go do a lot of internet scrubbing and reading of wikis to get other people's interpretations, because From doesn't really throw a lot of story at you. There's a lot of world richness there, but it's left to interpretation, like nearly 80%. So they're neat, though. T. Schmidt, yeah, Hollow Knight is okay. I don't really like the 2D ones as much. Again, they're just boss beat 'em ups, and the boss fights when you only have that 2D world to move in don't feel very fun to me. I like being able to, 2.5D it, 3D it, and move around. You were unable to beat Elden Ring because you keep falling through the map in the Altus Plateau. It took them 2 months to fix it. I never had a single problem with that game. Like, literally, never had a single problem. The only time things like that'll happen in Souls games, to my understanding, is like when you're trying to cheese, or, you're going on edge of world type stuff. I literally never had a crash, never fell through anything. I thought Elden Ring, once I got going, was a tremendous game. It's been I don't know if it's easy to say it's been my favorite Souls-like. Probably because of how immersive time-wise it was, because of all the things you could go do, and the order was very frustrating. The thing that got me to stop playing Elden Ring was that at the first, I beat it in that first wave after release.
Somebody likes us.
And the problem is that when you started New Game Plus, they didn't give you your map back. You had to go unlock that entire map again. And then when they made the patch that gave you the map, they just decided arbitrarily that everybody that's already in New Game Plus, you're screwed. You're not going to get the map. You have to finish it without it. And so there's no way to enjoy the game without going back and redoing everything. That just seemed like they hated their player base when they did that. So shame on FromSoft for doing that. I haven't gone back and booted it up again to see if they've since fixed that, because I know there was a real big uproar from a lot of us that had finished it early. Johnny Danger, thank you for the follow.
Thanks, Johnny Danger.
The atmospheric and tight combat looks so alluring, then I get demotivated by getting slammed in the face by a brick wall. You don't enjoy doing 10 plus attempts at a boss. Yesterday, on the first boss in Lies of P, I probably got him on my 5th or 6th attempt. But I approach these games differently. I go in and I try to understand the move set. I try to recognize things that are going on and then find out where my move set interacts with it. I spend a lot of that learning the game early on, because the first and second boss fights usually tell you everything you need to know. So the first and second boss fights usually take me a lot more. But I killed the second boss on my first try. So, I don't know. The parry timing on it is kind of horrible, but it works. And you don't have to. It helps to be able to parry in Lies of P, but you don't have to. You can brute force it if you want to. You'll always be a Dark Souls 2 apologist. I like Dark Souls 2. But Dark Souls 3 will always be my favorite of the Dark Souls named ones, I think. Maybe Dark Souls 1 just because of what it was at the time. Because it was so what Demon Souls wanted to be. Some good yellow teeth. They need a little bit of whitey whiteness, just not too much.
Game Delay said the boss that kicked me off of Elden Ring was finding mini painting.
Was finding what?
Mini painting.
Oh, really? Did you really come to mini painting out of video gaming, and it's now stolen some of your time? I mean, for me, I've been painting for so long, but I go in these cycles. Jen's seen it. I won't play video games for almost a year. Like, won't even really. I'll sit in front of my computer at night watching YouTube videos and doing other, internet rabbit hole things, but I won't play very many games. And then I'll find something like Noida that'll steal what feels like months of my life being tremendously fun and having a blast. And then when I feel like I've reached, because right now in Noida, there's only a couple of achievements that I really still feel like I want to do, and they're 100+ hour type investments, so I'm not doing them. But then I find games like Lies of P, and now I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go home and play some Lies of P, because it really gets me energized. But then after that, since I don't like Lords of the Fallen, I'll paint.
Game Delay said, yeah, mini painting killed my video gaming almost entirely.
Awesome. I mean, if that's okay with you,
yeah.
Then that's awesome.
Johnny Danger said, any chance the paint trays are coming back in stock? Oh, the foam? Are the foam trays out of stock?
Foam trays or the wooden racks? We're not making the wooden racks anymore. The foam tray should be in stock. Ghosty used to be a full-time WoW streamer. Have never done art in your life and got a box of Terminators back in 2022. That's awesome.
That's very cool.
I mean, not the bad relationship.
Oh, yeah. The phone
You picked up wargaming miniature painting because you needed a better hobby than just video games for hours on end. I feel like they, you know, for nerds that enjoy video games, I think that they are very well paired, because in one world you can kind of go away with less investment and get similar return, depending on the kind of games you play, right? If you play, you know, Rainbow Six or something like that, you know, then I don't know that if you're all full out competitive in your video game play, then there's never a relaxing point for you. But that's not what you're after. But if you like to just kind of go away into fantasy worlds and, you know, play games head to head and stuff like that, you can play, I mean, you can basically play Warcraft, right? Because you can do Total War. And so you can go into the video game, but the effort that you have to spend is much less. It's just time. So I think that they relate very well if you spend their time that way. I just know for me, I have a real hard time finding video games I like anymore. So that's my big problem. I like downloaded Tomb Raider Revised or whatever, the original Tomb Raider they've redone, right? Remastered. And so I'm looking at that because that's like one of my favorite games of all time, the old, you know, like PlayStation 2 Tomb Raider. So that's how desperate I am. I'm like, I'll go back and play a game I played when I was in my, was I even 20 years old then? I don't know. Probably.
Game Delay said, I've never been happier since I fell into painting. It truly is my joy.
Awesome.
We are so glad to have you.
Hey, careful. He'll keep showing up if you talk to him like that.
Plug foam is in stock, but not the paint trays. Just quit video games once I found mini painting. I find a real sense of accomplishment in painting that I tried for years to find in video games.
Oh yeah, in that sense, mini painting wins hands down, unless you're at a level where you're, you know, competing on the world stage, you know, esports wise, or, you know, Dr. Disrespect levels of income, Asmongold, you know, guys and gals like that, where you're not really even having to invest in the whole video game. You're in the world, you don't have to worry about the games anymore.
Game Delay hit 100 streams in a row today. Said, I think that means I now have to take up crochet.
Oh, geez. Was that a Shelby bet?
And then he said, Shelby! After my first day of painting minis, I was hooked. It has brought me a joy that I haven't felt in years, and that was before I had even tried the games that the minis were for.
Nice.
That's awesome. I don't play any games. I like to paint.
Jen does crosswords. That's as close to video games because she does it on her phone. It's as close as she'll get.
And Wordle. I like my word puzzles every day. I forgot to put that on my little survey where he asked about our things we do in our free time, or like hobbies, favorite hobbies. I should have put crossword puzzles on there.
Some pearlies. Changes his whole face now that you can see his teeth. Lost half your game time when you started painting. Yeah, I mean, painting will suck away your hours, right? You enjoy the completion of a good long game with a story. See Baldur's Gate 3 or Witcher 3. Yeah, I think if you can find games like that, I know Baldur's Gate 3 got a lot of acclaim for finally being a complete game that told a story, and that's awesome. I think so many games have gone into the world of the story. You know, you could say that Destiny has a story, but the way they implemented their first game just kind of ruined that. I know they're still one of the biggest community of games out there, but I feel like there's a dearth of things that have a good story that take up a lot of time. I just did the Inside and whatever the other game that I was talking about that the people that made Inside made. Fantastic. Both of them great stories, but super short. 4 hours, done.
Kimberly said, I still occasionally go back and make some progress in Marvel's Midnight Suns and sometimes join my real son for Helldivers 2, which makes me...
You have a fake son?
Yes.
That's the first thing I read.
Yeah.
Tala, you got a 40K Combat Patrol over a year ago. You haven't played a single game because I'm trying to get better at paint. That's awesome. Going back to what somebody said, that the rewarding nature of painting can be such that, when you get something done, that's something you get to hold on to and come back to. That miniature that you felt really good about, it's there, right? I mean, assuming your dog doesn't eat it or it dies in a fire, that miniature is always there, and you can then build off of that one. So you see your progress in a very real way, not just, little achievement ticks on Steam, which still have value. Like I loved beating the boss that I beat last night at the end of the night. I think that's fun and it's great, but the better thing is finishing a model for me. So I'm right there with you.
I forgot about the neighbor kid that paints your models.
The neighbor kid is not my son. No matter what he or 23 and me says, he needs to be quiet and keep painting. 23 and me. Any thoughts on Spearhead for Age of Sigmar? Do you have any interest in playing? Not really. We were just joking about it before stream. I'm bad about tabletop games because I'm so competitive. And I feel like I am always on the verge of sucking the fun out of a game for my opponent. So that has a tendency to make me not want to get involved because I really enjoy the social aspect of gaming. So for me, most times, like when we do our Friday night game night, I'll sit out there and banter with the guys and gals and tell bad jokes and order pizza and all that. That's what I really love about gaming, is the group effort around all of us sitting around telling jokes and having fun. I don't need to be the one throwing dice. And that sucks because I really want to sometimes, but again, I'm the wrong kind of competitive for that type of social environment, right? I'm not a table flipper by any means, but I mean, I grew up playing competitive sports. And so for me, winning is a real thing. It's like I come to win. And it's not always across the table from people that are there just to win. If people just want to have a good time, I have to admit, I don't know how to do that with tabletop games. I can with, like, if we sit down and play... Jacob brought that card game that looked like a bunch of intestines that you put out on the table. Did you ever sit down and play that with us? I don't remember what it's called. Tapeworm. It's called Tapeworm. And you have all these cards that are various sections of a tapeworm. It's so bad. It literally is like a worm inside a colon. It's the weirdest thing. But you play this tapeworm thing, right? And I had a lot of fun with that. I'm still competitive in that, I got the card, I can do the thing. But at the end of the thing, winning at Tapeworm didn't have any value to me. But for some reason, winning at Space Marines has a value to me. So I just kind of stay away from it.
Chuck said, Baldur's Gate was great till your wife throws you off a cliff with Thunder Wave. I was going to say that Jason has lost to his partner as well.
Your dog ate minis. No. Did I soul crush Zambies? No. That was a very close game. We tied.
Band of Goblins, hello. We are well. How are you?
Yeah, Sugar Rush. That's a problem. The war bands for Warcry that they sucked out and all of that. I feel like that's always a fear. But again, unless you're playing competitively, it doesn't matter because you can sit down with your friends and play those war bands still. I think the problem becomes they won't balance around them anymore. So as the game goes on, if you just stick with the models you have, you'll find yourself probably retreated into, or the reverse could be like your armies are either going to suck against all the new ones, or they're going to not balance, and you're going to be like, ripping your friends apart because they forgot about your old army that's going to decimate in the rules. But they won't get like rules updates very often if they put them in Legends, especially not for Warcry. So that kind of sucks. Jess, you run into the same thing. I don't know how to play for fun. I was taught to play to win. I find cheering my opponent has helped. Yeah, teaching people to play games is really good for me. So like teaching people BattleTech, going on and playing BattleTech with Miniac was a ton of fun because I don't have the competitive nature when I'm teaching you how to play, because I want you to have fun and play the game. And so unlike some people, when they teach you a game, they stomp your guts in. That's not fun. So I love teaching people to play games, right? I love writing game rules We were talking about that before the stream. I really love coming up with game systems. I don't want to play. So, no, they're killing the Warcry warband. They're killing the Warcry warbands in Age of Sigmar. I don't know if they're killing them in Warcry though, right? Real DiCaprio, as a former tabletop world champion, that social aspect can be a thing to study, read, and beat. And suddenly it was not just studying, you became a better person just with an objective approach about it. Super weird. That's cool. That's what I do. I mean, honestly, as a game, as a burgeoning game development company, because we're making games, I like to sit and watch the interactions on games, even if it's Age of Sigmar, 40K, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Shatterpoint, whatever. I like to watch the interactions between people as the events take place, and then study what the events are, because that really shows the true nature of the game, right? And it's funny because there are so many great interactions with some games, and then others are just real bland, right? And so I try to learn a lot from that. And not in the sense of me becoming a better player, but in the sense of how better games get along, right? Sugar Rush is out of GW collecting, only play at the shops, and it's tourney every weekend. Not having fun playing, they take it way too serious. That's tough, right? Because your community is a large part of how you interact with gaming. That's just kind of how it goes. Your friend group, and if your friend group gets competitive, that can drive some people out. I got very competitive with Infinity, and I got very competitive with War Machine. I was not willing to chase the meta in War Machine because I was also having fun painting the models, and I had the armies that I really liked. So armies that I really liked were not competitive all the time. Some of them were, some of them weren't. And it always felt like a flip of the coin too much. And so that one kind of knocked me out. And then they kind of took the storyline and ended the world and started over with Mark IV, and I didn't join along for the ride yet. Infinity, they came out with new rule sets too quick, and I don't know what game they were playing over at Corvus Belli, but at one point in time it just became infantry spam, and it was crazy. So they lost me because my competitive nature likes to play with, beat your face in type army lists. And I'm that, whatever they call it, Timmy. I'm Timmy. I like to put down big creatures and smash face. And so that didn't bode well for me in that realm. But all right. What are these things?
I was just going to say, I'm surprised that you haven't painted any of the stuff.
Well, it's like a crown of... It's because I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. I know he has some earrings I got to paint, but I got to figure out what's hair and what's not. I think that's an earring.
Do you need me to find a picture or something?
No. I'll find my way around it. I'm still in the point where I'm trying to just put color on all the things so that I can get a feeling. Like, he's got 2 Terrorgeist pelts on here. Here's one Terrorgeist head, and then there's another one someplace over here. Oh, one down here. So, or big bats or Vargulfs or something like, they look like Terrorgeist. And then there's a lot of heads in here. So there's pelts on here. But then this spine thing in the middle is like that's part of his body, so that's got to be a different color. That's not fur.
Said it's a bone crown.
Yeah, it's like a bone crown. So I guess that's what we do. We paint it bone color. We'll just start putting some color down. Who cares?
Repentia, April 25th. Be able to buy them. Order them from our website. You might see them
Flip-timber glowing teeth. What?
The Flip-timber glowing teeth, you have to have a special access code to get it that early.
Malifaux, I really loved. Jen actually played a game of Malifaux.
I did.
It was a really fun game. I feel like taking the randomization into a deck of cards was cool, and how it interacted and how you got to build a hand of cards to kind of lessen the RNG was fun. I'm not a big fan of RNG in games that have a winner. That has never been one of my favorite things, right? Rolling dice, doing everything right, and then having the dice be not in your favor has never been a fan of mine, or I've never been a fan of it. So, in our world of tabletop war games, I'm kind of on the outside looking in a lot of times because I'm like, I don't want to have to roll a bunch of dice. There's a lot of good games now that make the RNG more weighted towards action and not just rolling a bunch of ones and having a crappy game. You know, not everybody's GW. And even GW is not GW all the time. Like Warcry, I feel like, is a great game.
Repentia, no pre-orders. That'll be the day that you can buy them, and we will ship them starting the next day, probably.
Yeah, we have a philosophy around here. We don't take your money until we have your product to ship.
Game delay, you heard correct. I did win the game of Malifaux.
Game? I think she's beat me at every game
I've only
we've played.
played 3 games, and I've won all 3.
Yep. She retired the champ.
Yes.
In all categories.
It's the way
She
to
beat
do
me
it.
at what did we play?
Monster
Arena Rex.
Apocalypse.
Monster
Rex,
Apocalypse, Arena Rex,
and Malifaux.
and Malifaux.
Yep.
She whooped my butt at all of them.
I am undefeated.
Retired the
That's
champ.
how you remain undefeated.
You win once and quit.
Source,
Retired.
what colors for what?
What's that?
Source is just saying what colors, and I don't know what colors. I don't know what he's asking. Right now, what colors is he using?
Drab brown.
Bakamaru said, Fuse, I'm sure this has been answered before, but as a fan of BattleTech PC game, Mech Commander, and Mech Warrior games, I've never played the BattleTech or Mech Warrior tabletop games. Why do you like it so much?
I like it because it is a very narrative game system. It tells better stories on the tabletop than most games I've played, and because it's near and dear because it was one of the first war games I ever played. Got to remember BattleTech's been around forever, and so I have been playing it since I was like 10 or 11 years old, 12 years old. Now, I'm not like some old grognard. I stopped playing BattleTech for a long time. But it never really changed either.
What's a grognard?
Like a grumpy old man kind of thing.
Oh. I had no idea. We have a store called
Grognard's
Grognard
Games.
Games.
Yep.
Like, most of the time I just assume it's a made-up word.
That's just a made-up word.
It's a made-up word, but they're just like nonsense words.
But BattleTech is a world that has so much variety. They there's a bajillion mech chassis that really only do like one of 5 jobs, right? They brawl, they scout, they snipe, they support, or they just do like general lifting. But there's 50 million chassis, so you can get one that you really like the look of, and you're like, yeah, this is rad. And it's a very balanced system in that regard, because the way that points work, it hasn't always been that way. There's been infinitely bad times to be playing BattleTech.
Ironically, everyone that works at Grognard's is very much not a Grognard.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Grognard's is a mispronunciation of a French word, but I can't remember which one.
But it's great. From a narrative sense, you can set up a really cool asymmetric battle. So you can have like, a full lance of mechs of your choosing go up against no mechs at all and lose, because you can set up like a tower defense mission where the person playing the tower defense has just as much fun as the person playing mechs because they have the rules for it. There are a ton of different scenarios. It gets super crunchy if you want super crunchy. It can be very RPG if you want it to be very RPG. It's just a great game system. And kudos to Catalyst Games for coming in and picking up the IP and running with it and really showing that it still has legs even today. And it's not all just a bunch of grumpy old BattleTech players. With Alpha Strike, which I played my first game of Alpha Strike with the Death Ray Design guys, Justin from Death Ray Designs, at Adepticon this year. I took my Lance, and I didn't get to field any. He wouldn't let me field any of my own models. He made me play Filthy Clan mechs. That bastard. But I played Alpha Strike, and while I don't like the game that much, I get it. It is bringing a whole new world of players into the realm of BattleTech in a way that is very conducive to enjoying the game itself. So it's fun. Nice, Nodens.
That's awesome.
All worlds are made up, even this one.
Which is why I clarified and said that I assumed that they were nonsense words.
You can't wait for the new Halo game from Mantic? Yeah. I had lunch with Ronnie from Mantic at Adepticon and talked a lot about that. It's a great game. Is Alpha Strike not normal BattleTech? No. It is a rules-stripped version of BattleTech. It's very, much more fast-paced, much more, gosh, what would be a good way to say this? It gives mechs hit points, as opposed to all of the record keeping you have to take in real BattleTech. In real BattleTech, this mech has what we call like probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 300 armor points, right? And so 300 armor points equal to 300 physical boxes on a page that's in the shape of the mech that you tick off as you take damage. And the randomness of locations of place damage and the ability to aim shot and things like that lets you fight through a lot of attrition. So it feels very, how to put it, grindy in that sense, but in a good way. It's rare to lose a mech like to a random headshot, right? Or bad rolls. You can suffer a few rounds of bad rolls and still play well and get rewarded for your play in BattleTech. Unless you pilot all light mechs. They die instantly. But I don't remember what that guy's called. I think it's called the Gunslinger. I think it's a Gunslinger. An assault mech. So you have to tick off all those boxes, and not all of them, because you could continue hitting it in the left torso and eventually blow it up and only ever hit the left torso. Once you get through armor, you get into substructure, and then you start doing critical damage, and then engines blow up and everything goes nuclear. So it feels very, very intense from the combat perspective. You have a risk and a reward, and your investment continues round after round after round. But each mech, especially when you get to heavies and assault mechs, each mech is like having a full army on the table for Age of Sigmar. Because like I said, it takes 300 points of damage to kill that mech. Think about most of the armies. How many wounds are you putting on the table in 40k? Are you putting 300 wounds on the table in 40k? Maybe? I don't know. I haven't done that math in a long time. But you might have an army that only has 300 wounds for your whole army. So they only have to do 300 damage to you through the whole game. Well, you got to do, you might have to do 300 damage to that one mech, and I have 4. Not all of them are that big, but you start getting my drift. So it's not a slug it out game. It's a game of narrative combat where you place a story action on the board so that you can say, okay, the goal is for me to destroy this installation, this ammo depot from the enemy. I have to figure out how to use the terrain to get to the depot without dying, and then kill the depot, and then get off a board edge to survive. And as long as I have one mech make it off the board edge, I win, as long as the ammo dump is blown up. So it's less about the combat between mechs and more about the strategy of winning and getting off the the board or whatever the thing is. It's very rarely about just go to this corner of the board and sit there and gain victory points. It makes it more interactive if you write the missions well. And so there's a lot of times where you don't even really pay attention to the opponent's mechs. They are paying attention to you, but you're trying to just avoid and run and dodge and get the mission done. And so it can appeal to a lot of different types of players. If you play regular BattleTech and you just say, hey, let's just fight to the death, you'll probably never kill anything. Like, it takes forever. Like, you can play for 8 hours and have 1 out of 8 mechs die. It's pretty crazy. So that's not the way you really play it. But Alpha Strike turns that into a game where you play head-to-head combat. You can still play with objectives, but it's more Warhammer. Alpha Strike was made to appeal to the modern-day Warhammer crowd that is more about, sitting down and pounding through a game in a couple of hours and blowing stuff up, rolling dice, beer and pretzels, and less accounting. You don't have to account for heat. In regular BattleTech, everything you do generates heat. and based on how much heat you retain every round, you can either limit you on what you can do or how far you can move and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of accounting to it. So
T-Law said, my local game store owner doesn't supply Monument. What do I need to tell him to get his act together?
to contact us, contact support at monumenthobbies.com. We can get them set up. That's easy. Filthy Clanner.
Tell him people will buy it if he sells it in his store.
I only play Inner Sphere mechs. You saw me. I painted 47 mechs in like 2 weeks, plus my dropship. I have an entire regiment, no, multiple regiments for a battalion. Is that how that works? I forget. I have a full battalion of Inner Sphere mechs. What's my favorite mech? The Wolverine 7K. Probably my favorite. Mad Cat, coolest mech. Change your mind. I just did. Wolverine 7K. I can take 2 for the points of your Mad Cat, and they will kill you. You're up to 40 mechs now? That's the thing, though, is that you really can play BattleTech. Whatever mech you like is the right choice. Because they're all so similar, and, you know, you can pick bad loadouts for missions and get trounced. You know, if you take all missiles to a close-in engagement, you're probably going to get trounced. But if you have half of a wit, you know, you'll know how to put your mechs together. And it's cheap. I mean, BattleTech is right now one of the least expensive games to get into. The starter box is $80 or something like that at full retail with 8 mechs, I want to say. 2 full lances in it, all Inner Sphere. And then there's the clan box that comes with, good God, I think it comes with 9 or more, maybe 10, because I think it has some stands of elementals. And both of them are really great places to start. And the rules are all right there. And then you can play till your heart's content, and never need to buy anything except maybe you start, you know, printing out or buying some terrain, you know. But the terrain is all on the playmat. It's all very, very easy to do. You play it with 2 dice. You never roll more than 2d6. Super simple. How does Alpha Strike compare to the MechWarrior Dark Ages click strip down rules? Very similar in how click's played. But it's on little cards. You have every mech that you buy comes with an Alpha Strike card, and then you have to actually go get the rules for Classic BattleTech for it off the web. They don't come with the Classic BattleTech sheet, the SDS. You got to go get that off the internet, but they're free. Print out a PDF for any mech and the 5,000 different mechs. Someone bribe whoever's next in the signature paint series to name all their colors after clan mechs. It's a good thing we don't let them name their paints. The clan box has like 1 star and 1 lance and then a couple of elementals too, right? Is it more miniatures or do the elementals count as part of the star? I don't remember. Hairdo, very distinct hum in the audio. No idea why.
I don't hear it.
Yeah, if it's humming when we're not talking, it's on your end. Because it gates it here. Yeah, so when I'm talking? Yeah, I don't know.
Did I turn you down or up?
What's that?
Did it turn your volume down?
I don't know. You might turn mine down. I'm not peaking very bad though, I don't think.
You're not. They're making it unwatchable for you?
Nah, we don't have like a lot of compression or anything on it, so check the gain on your side too. If you're trying to listen to it at low volume or it's not turned up, make sure you're balanced on your end too. Doesn't mean that we don't have a little hum. Our electric here is not balanced in the studio, so HVAC hum can be. I don't think the AC is running. All right, I want Voist Bone. Inner Sphere mics. Those damn clan mics work so much better. Till they don't.
Weird, I'm not seeing all of the same chat comments.
What do you mean?
Well, like there's some over here that are not over here.
I know they show up first, but that program may be lagging too.
It's way.
The YouTube ones and vice versa. I see them lag a lot. It relies on that dang interface to do its job. Damn kids and their software.
Screwball said, can you show off how you set up and use your palette? Everyone on YouTube seems to yell wet palette, but after hearing you use a dry one, I'm curious how you use it.
Like that. It's a disaster. I'm painting out of this glop of paint down here in the lower right. Right here. I haven't cleaned it in forever. So it's a huge mound of nonsense. I can't even find the paint I put on it anymore. I keep threatening to clean it, and then I never do.
We just use maybe a little less paint at a time so that it doesn't dry out. That's just a piece of glass, yeah. It's gray glass. But we've used paper palettes, the little like glossy paper works great. Ceramic tiles a lot of people will use.
Yep. Yeah, we still use palette paper, piece of acrylic that I take when I travel. Works really well. Anything will work. Just paint.
But yeah, he'll just squeeze a little bit of paint out. Damp brush, usually if he's thinning it for anything, then if you want to describe how you do that, you pull a little bit out first. And
yeah, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Let me get this last of this color on here, and then we'll stop, and I'll show you how I would set up a color and use it. Super, super simple. Part of why I'm a big fan of not having to use anything like a wet palette or anything like that, because I'm super lazy. When it comes to painting, I just want to put the paint out on the palette. That's why Acryl's made the way that it is. It's just meant to put on your palette and paint with. Not a lot of thinking they have to do. You can get complicated with it, but it's not meant to have to. So let's just go back to full frame here. And I'll try to pick there's a semi-clean spot here.
Yeah.
Like literally, this is my disaster. That is my palette right now. This is 9 by 12 or something, maybe bigger than 9 by 12. I don't remember. It's from New Wave Products.
Purchased on Amazon.
Just on Amazon. Right, but it's literally just a mound. Like if we turn it sideways, you'll see how thick the paint is built up on there. Look at that. That's
pretty funny.
That's a lot of months. Of
It's
paint
been a while.
built up. Right. So yeah, but I mean, whenever I'm painting, you can kind of see the way I use the paints, because you see a bunch of small spots of color with a tail pulled out of them, right, in various directions. I mean, there's a lot of motion to my palette, right, because I paint with it like this. This is how it sits to me, right? So I'm always, pulling the paint this way. So it has a lot of directionality to it. But I'll put paint down, then get moisture on my brush, and then just kind of pull a little bit of that paint out as I need it. What's a good color here that you can actually see?
Ghost Hunter, no. Most of the paint from Christmas Sushi, well, I don't know what you're talking about with Christmas Sushi. Most of the paint that Jason used last Monday went on his hands.
Went what?
Ghost Hunter said most of the paint is from Christmas Sushi last Monday. And I said, no. Jason, who was painting last Monday, used his thumb palette.
So drop
and
of
then
paint.
the back of his hand and the palm of his hand and all like the whole hand, basically.
I put a small drop out, and then I then, because of the way our paint works, I hit the remainder of the droplet on there and pull that tail on there. Then I'll take my brush, get some water on it to whatever level of dampness I need, and then you'll see me bring small amounts of paint out of that drop, right? And then I use this paint right here to paint with. And I'll come over here and maybe I'm glazing with it, so I'll get it pretty thin. But if I'm not glazing, I do the same thing. I just take more of the water off of my brush, and then when I grab the paint and paint with it, I've got like full opacity. So I can do whatever I need to, the same way you would with a wet palette, doesn't matter. But the big key is just making sure you're only kind of like poking at the edges of the droplet, right? So I've got a big droplet of paint on there. It doesn't look like a lot of paint, but it really is, because I can pull all this out here, and if I'm diluting it, I don't need a whole lot of paint. The water does a bulk of the work, right? So if I pull a tail out here and have more water on my brush, I can use that paint for a good minute. And then I go and I paint on the model, and as I'm painting on the model, this of course will dry, and then I come back, rinse my brush off, come back and pull another little tail of paint out into that same paint. And I'm always agitating that same area, right? And that's why you'll see stuff like this. The more I glaze, the bigger the splotch gets, you know.
Parkatron, ceramic tile will work the same way. Source, it's a brush that he's testing. It's not a brush that we.
Like you can see like some of the colors I've been painting with, like
Not the starter set brush.
The base for the bone is still workable here. What did I use later? The skin tone I used to highlight the teeth is down here, and that still works perfectly. That was a while ago. What else is wet still here? The yellow green I was using on the tongue is still workable. You know, so there's a lot of paint on here from today that I haven't, used in the last hour that I can still get life out of.
And Screwball said no
Here.
worries about it drying out on the palette too quickly.
No, that's what I'm showing right now.
Yeah.
Like this yellow green we used to paint his tongue, and we did that a long time ago, and I can still use it.
No, it's very dry. We live in Arizona. We have air conditioning running, not right now, but the AC makes it even more dry in here. We don't use any kind of humidifier or any device, nothing.
Here's the key. The biggest reason I like a dry palette is that the paint that I have access to on a dry palette is always the paint out of the bottle. It's not diluted at all. So like this drop of yellow green, if I go back to it after it's sitting here for an hour, right, I'm painting with the exact same paint that I would get out of the bottle. So its opacity is exactly the way it should be, right? And then I can still go back and thin it how I want, right? To start glazing with it if I need to, right? So if I want to do something more filtered, I can do the same thing with it. But with a dry palette, I never have to worry about my paint being a diluted form of itself. I've always got the real paint. And that's where you want to start from, right? You want to start with how the color acts right out of the bottle and then adjust it to your painting needs, as opposed to having the palette decide how that paint's going to act for you. And a wet palette dilutes your paint over time to where even if it's held that paint workable longer, it's not the same paint you really want all the time, because it won't be full opacity. So it forces you into layering more. It depends on you. Everybody learns to paint that way, so that may be comfortable for you. But for me, I like to have full opacity paint. I like to have the paint right out of the bottle and work with it. I put less out on the palette. So if I'm, because obviously on stream, a lot of times we're sitting here yapping and we don't paint as much as we talk. But as we paint, I go back over to the color, and if it dries out, I don't feel like I wasted a bunch, There's been plenty of times where we get into a discussion like this, where I had a color out that I was using for something specific, and then we start talking, and then I, go back, and all of a sudden that paint is dried up, and I just put out another little drop. And I'm not the kind of painter that wastes paint just because we make paint. I think a lot of people feel like, because we have access to free paint because we make it all the time. I am super frugal. They had to come through, like Gabe and Chris and Jen will tell you, they had to come through here and get rid of first gen paint bottles out of Jen and mine's stuff. Jen was the biggest culprit.
Bottle.
And she was still painting from the 17 mil bottles that we had
from 2018.
Right? And I still have, I've still got bottles that, I don't anymore because they made me change them all. But I still had first gen bottles.
We're not
I still have a couple
around here at all.
If you remember this back in the day, this was Gen 1 paint, 17 mil Acryl right there.
Yep. So cute. So cute.
So, it's just a matter of I don't waste paint is what I'm trying to say. So you don't using a dry palette doesn't waste anything. You can feel like your money's still very valuable in the paints you buy.
There was a question that I lost about someone asking if they could order the paint with their choice of caps, and unfortunately
No.
we can't do that. The paint, we bottle hundreds of each color at one time, and it has to have a cap on it right away. We don't want us to leave the paint sitting out here with no caps on it, so we don't do capping to order.
Yeah, because the machinery that we use to cap is also built specifically for a type of cap, and we would have to have complete different tool changes to change the type of cap that we do, and we would never know who wants to buy what, and so we would always be changing caps, and we can't afford to do that.
The amount of people, it's a...
El Rondorio, us too, yeah. They're 25 mil bottles. We say 22 mil because we feel like that's about right, but you probably get more like 23 mil in the bottle.
The vast majority of paints out there have our standard cap on them.
Source, has your formulation for any of the existing colors changed over the years? Yes. We recently, within the last year, changed Faded Plum. We found that the original pigmentation had a little bit of a reaction to excessive amounts of glycol-based products. There were some other third-party products that people were using for varnishes and stuff, or not varnishes, but like odd mediums that caused a reaction with the pigment. Nothing horrible. It just wasn't what we intended. And so we went back and found another pigment that actually we could replace in that. So that took a lot more time than we wanted it to, but we did that. There's slight changes that we go through sometimes because pigment changes from manufacturers. So you might find a grind of pigment that's slightly off in color. But from a reformulation, no. The Acryl formulation has pretty much stayed tried and true. There were some alterations at the very early Gen 1 stuff as we were finding our way from like base set to expansion 1 that we played around with to make like the open time a little bit better. But it would be unnoticeable to anybody other than us, really. Do we offer your own version of Liquid Talent, aka Devlin Mud, like washes? Yeah.
Well, we don't click links.
Yeah, we do not recommend clicking links in chat.
Please don't anyone click
But
that
yeah,
link.
the formulation hasn't changed. I know some people that have reviewed our paints have said they changed the formula from the version 1. That's not true. They just got good and able to use our paints.
Wizards Butt formulation changes depending
Yes.
on if it's paler in the winter or more tanned in the summer.
Yeah, Wizard's Butt is the only paint we don't guarantee because it has crazy science and magic and pixie dust that it goes through.
And nude sunbathing, apparently.
But no, we feel like we nailed it the first time out. We're always looking at it. The nice thing is that because we control the formulation, we have the ability to look at things and say, hey, we'd really like to see about this. Could we do anything about this? And if we want to go in this direction, could we? And then we weigh what does it take away from the line if we were to do a broad stroke change versus just doing one color this way. Like the satin was a good introduction because taking away the highly matte finish for Matt and Ben's paint sets in the signature line to add our first satin colors to the line is something that took us a while. We had done a lot of that before their sets with satin black. So we had already formulated satin black over a year ago, 18 months ago, maybe longer, maybe 2 years ago, to make sure that we could do satin colors and they would live up to the Pro Acryl expectation. We just didn't really have an avenue for anything other than satin black, and it hadn't found its way into a set yet. So when Ben and Matt came along and said, hey, we'd like a little bit more of a satin finish, we were like, we can do that. So we had done the science behind it to make sure that it still felt like Pro Acryl. It's a little different because the difference between satin and matte colors will have a different feel on the palette and the way that they cure and things like that. But, we made sure that it still was, able to work with our formula the way we expected it to. So there are slight changes like that. Same with the gloss. Same with certain metallics, So we're constantly looking at it, but we won't just make wholesale changes for any reason. I mean, we're artists. We make the paint we want to paint with. There's no reason to go changing it. You won't see like a V2 Pro Acryl. There's no need,
Is there anything I can do about this buzz?
No.
We can end if we need to, if it's unwatchable.
Yeah. Now that people have said it, you're hearing it, but it's probably just because you're trying to ask for too much gain and you've got your volume balanced. Either you have a headphone volume, but your system volume's down low. So make sure your system volume is as high as you can take it, and then back it down on your headphones.
We're
if
done
you're listening
in
on
10
headphones.
minutes.
But we don't have any reverb. No effects. No effects. We have a gate, and so what you're hearing is the background noise from the electrical system in the building because we don't have isolation on this room. We're not a recording studio, so. Ustrella says, legit, you probably talked me out of using a wet palette since I'm so used to dry palettes already. I mean, you don't have to change. Try it, right? Like I said, we have a wet palette over here on my side too, right? I have one sitting over here. I've used it, right? That's my wet palette paper from the last time we were painting with it. I use it. I know how to use it. It works. It doesn't do anything for me that creates a balance for the hassle of using a wet palette because the paper's always drying up, corners are folding, it's wrinkling, you know. I'm always having to add water to it. I just don't have to do that over here. All I have to do with the dry palette is I have to go soak it in a bucket, which I never get around to doing anyway, so I just paint with it forever until... The easiest thing would be to spend $17 on another piece of glass.
But Ustrello, yeah, don't feel like you should try it just because you see certain painters using one. If your dry palette works for you and you're happy with the results that you get with it, keep using it.
Gamet Elay says, can we get some reverb on? I would love to have her with like the Wizard of Oz voice, like, you know, like, I am the wizard. Oh, that would be great.
I will have Gabe and Christopher, I will alert them to this issue.
It's in there. The mixer has that, so. Someone took a bite out of the wet palette paper. I probably tore it. You find the hardest thing about wet palette is judging glaze consistency? Well, because it's always changing. One of the things you have to do is constantly be updating the way you glaze off of a wet palette, because every time you put pressure on the paper, it has the opportunity to allow more water through the paper. And because it's not robotic, it doesn't have programming, it doesn't know how much water to come through it. That's why when you see people say, oh, we have a new paper, you know, it lets less water through and all of that, it's like there's no smart paper. And so that until there is some sort of nanotechnology that says, hey, when the moisture above has decreased by 10%, release enough water to put it back where it needs to be, then it really is not, you know, true science. The one thing I say that kind of pisses people off is, like, if wet palettes were really a necessity for painting with acrylics, you would see more companies that make wet palettes, and nobody does in the art world. One company, Masterson's, right? And they're right down the street from us here. And I swear they're stuck in the 80s. Like, they do one thing, and that's all they do. And I don't know that if you go to, like, Dick Blick, maybe now there's Chinese wet palettes and stuff because the miniature world has created a need for them. But in the art world, there weren't wet palettes. It just wasn't a thing. Because it doesn't really offer you much. And they were developed for watercolor painters, more so than anything, gouache and watercolor painters. So that you could create out of paste watercolors and such, you could get the consistency you wanted, and adding more water to it, that was what you were wanting anyway. But with acrylics, it's just kind of an afterthought. So I see the neatness of them is so that, like I said, if you're making mixes and you like painting with them, paint with them. They're great. I'm not trying to put anybody down for it. But
Rondorio, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, she did.
I was wearing my normal, everyday attire.
She dresses up for stream, and then she goes back to the unicorn suit. That would be really funny if that were the case, by the way. You just walk by Jen's office, and she's just in her unicorn inflatable. It's inflatable. So, like, I can't imagine you sitting in a chair.
What this costume is that you're talking about.
Immortal, are your paints airbrush ready? Sure, you can put them through the airbrush without too much problem, without even thinning, although you'll get very vibrant base coats. So the way we say it is, you can, if you're doing like one figure or a handful of figures, you can just put the paint right in the airbrush and spray for most colors. Metallics I would thin, and like bright colors like white and such, I would probably put a little thinning flow improver or something in them, because you'll notice spotting with them quicker because they're bright and they cause more contrast. But yeah, I spray all the time with no thinning. You know, like my Blood Angels, these guys were all done with no thinning, except for the highest highlight. So all of the base coat and the reds and everything through there. And if I punch in on it, you'll see that there's very little, if any, spotting at all. Where's the cam thing? Is it this thing? Yeah. On this, bam. Right. So you'll see the consistency you get. And like I said, the only thing that I used thinning on was the brightest of these spots. And even then, not much. So it sprays really consistent. Good gradient. And this is with a 0.3 needle, not any fine detail or anything. We just blast it through our normal airbrush with the regular detail brush.
Yes, all of our paints are sealed under the cap. Make sure you take that off before you start painting.
Yeah, the new colors. People that'll be like, that.
Yeah.
Sealed for your
For
protection.
your protection.
So take that off. Leave that in.
Yeah, leave the round one.
This one makes sure the cap stays sealed after you take this off, which will make your paint last for a long time. But this is so that if you don't use a color immediately, it'll still be good when you get around to it.
Screwball said the other thing I was going to ask, what pressure do you recommend for spraying them?
Oh, I don't know. We spray it like 22 to 25 psi, but that's really going to be something that's up to you and how you like to airbrush. It's more of a, there's some objectivity to it, but it's mostly subjective. I know people that spray at 15. The slower you spray, the more you probably want to add thinning. And the higher pressure you spray with, the less thinning you probably want. Because obviously just the force of air hitting the model, it has a lot to do with distance of the model and stuff, but you can have spider webbing if you spray it too high of a PSI and with too much thinning. But if you're using right out of the bottle, somewhere in the 20 to 25 range works perfect for us, but we're in a really dry climate here in Arizona, so if you have more humidity in your area, you might find that you want to tune that down a little bit. So just play with it. If you already have settings that you enjoy using, use those settings. The only thing that we say with Pro Acryl that's different from your other paints is thin less. And that's because we use a very lightweight medium, right? The way that we formulated our paints is to have what I call a very lightweight. They're lower viscosity. They're closer to water in the way that they flow from the beginning, but they are not thin, right? They're not diluted. They have very, very high pigmentation. And so people treat them like other hobby paints and want to thin the crap out of them. And you can, but you're going to get much less opacity very quickly. They're made to be able to turn into glazes very easily, which is funny because we see people that are like, I have a real hard time glazing with them because they thin them too much. You don't have to add much dilution to them to glaze with them perfectly. So, are we done?
I gotta go lock up.
You currently have the 0.2 mil in from some detail work the other day. Let's see what happens. They'll spray through a 0.2. You'll probably want to thin them more just because the aperture is smaller, right? Don't eat the desiccant pack. We don't put that in anything. But yes, don't. Don't eat the little pack that comes in, I don't know, everything. Any dry goods. A mixer ball included in each bottle? Yeah, there's an agitator in each one. Glass agitator, no rust. Soda glass. Big 8 mil soda glass agitator, so it really mixes stuff up. So to get a thin glaze takes a lot of thinning? No, that's exactly not what I said. It does with other people's paints because they use a thicker medium. You have hundreds of paints and PA is the only one I've had to reorder paints for. That's not because they cover less. It's that you use them more often. That's awesome, Stowar. Thank you. I love hearing that kind of stuff. You just got a hardened Steenbeck Ultra and you're super excited to get into airbrushing. Oh, you're going to love it. Yeah, you're going to love it. Don't get frustrated, right? The first thing is learning the machine. So do a lot of test practice stuff. Don't go to a model you love and really want to see success on right out of the gates, unless you're just base coating and playing. Just paint old, crappy models and have fun with it, right? Because with airbrush, the biggest thing is to get used to the machine, right? You're going to have to do things like field strip it. I've got a really good video on YouTube about breaking your airbrush down no matter what kind it is, taking the needle out, taking the needle and nozzle combos out, cleaning it, field stripping it, getting it ready back to repair if you have problems that way. But that video will help you understand more about what each part does, because one of the most frustrating parts about airbrushes is trying to figure out what's wrong with it, right? Because a lot of times we get questions like, hey, I can't spray this color. And I'm like, does another color spray well? And then they're like, no, none of the colors spray well. I'm like, okay, you got to be able to problem solve, right? Because is it the paint or is it the brush? 9 times out of 10, it's the brush, not the paint. It can be the way you've diluted your paint, but once you get used to diluting your paint the way you're comfortable with, then most of the time it's the brush. And most of the time it's that the nozzle starts building up a skin of dried paint inside, and so it starts tightening up the aperture, because as you get paint building up on the wall on the inside of the brush, the tunnel starts to shrink. And as the tunnel shrinks, it causes the pressure to increase at the nozzle, which can cause flutter, right? It can cause spotting and things like that. So even if everything looks right, I just cleaned it and all that stuff, it's a lot of times it's worth soaking it, you know, or maybe have a little bit of hook at the end of the needle, stuff like that. So it's just really getting used to the machine and being able to take it and use it properly and get it repaired and back up to snuff. But, you know, no matter what you're using, you know, our Grex, the Iwatas, the Hard and Steenbecks, or whatever, they're all the same instrument. It's just different levels of attention paid in manufacturing. And it should do wonders for you. Whether you buy a cheapo airbrush from Masters just to prime with, or you buy the most expensive rig and want to do, you know, really close in detail work, just getting used to the brush itself is the biggest thing. These paints get better and better. We hope so. Have you ever thought of making a basics playlist? I mean, yeah, we're actually in the process of writing all that out. Now that, I mean, we've had Jordan here for a year. The biggest problem for us on YouTube content is that we spend so much time on the live stream. We've been doing this live stream for 8 years. And so this is what the studio is built for. So we're very good at coming in here for 2 hours and telling fart jokes and painting and having a good time with you guys and gals. But the editing of the content afterwards, it's having Gabe and Chris in the studio that's really helping with that. And so that's been able to have us have the shorts out every week. And then now it's more long form YouTube content that we're starting to look at scripting, and a lot of it's just how do we want it to look, how do we want to put it together to serve it up to you guys and gals. But we do have a basics. It'll start with me. I'm actually on the schedule, I think it's next week. Chris, am I next week? Gabe, anyone? They're probably already gone. But yeah, I think I'm either late this week or next week. I'm on the schedule to shoot the basics of Acryl, which will be talking about a lot of the things we've talked about here. And then I'm going to do a basics of airbrushing Acryl. They will be very slanted towards our products, obviously, but they will also be generic enough when I talk about airbrushing to help you with anything that you're doing. Right? 99% of the time, it's not clean. Yeah, exactly, Solways. That is the general problem. I always default to that, but I don't ever want to just default to, hey, clean it better, because that's not always the case, right? You love the new brush bristle preparation guide video, the chase the tip one? That was a fun one. I think we just did that as a stream outtake, right? Next week I'm on the schedule, says Chris. Went through a 2mm straight from the bottle, no problem. There you go. Source, thank you. That's awesome. But yeah, we've got to go. You know, it's been a crazy ride for us because, you know, most of you guys on the stream have been the reason why we've grown the way we have, because we have an audience that is tuned into us for, like I said, 8 years. Tens of thousands of people that have come through here, hundreds of thousands of people that have come through the stream over the years, and either learned about painting or, you know, just sat and had fun with us or whatever. And so that builds up a group of people that have tried our products and stuff. But a lot of times we got kind of lazy in the fact that we kind of know, and the people that have bought our products for so long kind of know us. And over the last year or two, that's changed. We have a lot of people, some of you out there, didn't know that we did this stream until today, maybe. Maybe you're joining us for the first time, and welcome if that's the case. But a lot of people are finding Acryl now because of the pervasiveness through the industry that we have now, which is incredible. But they're finding it and not knowing anything about it. They're seeing it at the store for the first time and don't know that we've been doing a stream and that that we're all painters and that we are painters that make paint and all that. They don't know our story. And so we're now having to learn to talk to those people, because for so long we've just been talking to people that already know us.
Some guy just called saying that you had a meeting with you at 4 and he's waiting.
Oh, okay.
So I can finish.
Yeah, okay. I got a meeting at 4 that I'm late for. So I got to go. But thank everybody. Jen's going to take you out. We'll look forward to seeing you back here. I will not be here tomorrow. Jen will not be here tomorrow. We have an off-site meeting, but it'll be Chris and Jordan. So have fun with them, and Jen will take care of the rest, and I will see you on Wednesday. What's that?
Okay, I'm back. I'm going to give you our links really quick here. So to wrap things up, first we have our store link. This will take you to monumenthobbies.com, where you can find all of the paint, the brushes that you see us using every day here on our stream, Pro Acryl, all of our carrying cases, the Evo bag and the Neo bag, and all kinds of good stuff. So check out that link. You might also be able to find our products in a local store near you. Check out our store locator link and type in your zip code, your address, your city, and see if there's someone nearby. Really great link for international folks who would like to get their hands on Pro Acryl. We have stores all over the world. Discord. Sorry, I can't talk and type at the same time. Our Discord link is where you'll find our wonderful community of hobbyists. We hang out there every day. There's lots of good discussion about tips and tricks for hobbying. We do product previews there, all kinds of fun stuff. So be sure to join our Discord. 4,139 amazing artists on the Discord and 1 paint sweeper. I don't know what that means, but that's Ghost Hunter. And then lastly, we have our YouTube link, and that is where you'll find all of our past live streams. We've got some tutorial videos. All of our shorts are over there, plus our fun commercials. If you're wondering what wizard's butt means, go watch our commercials. You'll find it out. And that is it for us. I think Jason already said this, but we do stream 5 days a week. We're here Monday through Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. in Arizona. Like he said, Jason and I will be gone tomorrow, but you will be in the very capable hands of Baby J and Christmas Sushi. They will take good care of you. So hang out for a little bit here. We're gonna raid into another stream. If you're on YouTube watching, maybe jump on over here if you want to continue to watch more painting. Join our raid, and we'll see you guys back here again next time. Bye, everyone.